we got to read this past month, Catalyst, a Rogue One story, which I believe came out like a month or 2 months before Rogue One.
Yes, sir. A lot of people read this book and then saw the movie, which I think it would work.
I think that would have been really cool, and I kind of wish that I would have maybe.
Me too.
But I also don't know if I would have felt as connected to the characters having not watched the movie first either. Like, I think there's a cool.
Oh, okay, I understand what you mean.
I think there's a cool aspect to being able to know Galen or Lyra.
Lyra.
I've
always said Lyra, back from the dead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like, she is in the movie, not much. Right?
Not much at all.
So, like, first time watching it, like, I don't have quite the connection to her and Galen in the very beginning of the movie, you know? But with this book, I feel like there's a lot more there that adds to what those three's history is, which is really good and really cool, and I like that a lot. So,
agreed.
It definitely, I think, would have been really cool to have read this and got a feel for who is Krennic, who is Galen, who is Lyra, before getting in, and a little bit of who Jyn is, right?
A little tiny bit, yeah. No, the thing that I think I would have benefited from more is just how codependent Galen Merrick, not Galen Erso is, without really knowing it about himself, right? Like, he needs Lyra to be around. Like, he needs someone else to fuel because his brain is the pilot, right? And he himself isn't controlling it sometimes. So, there's a part of me that's like, oh, okay, I think that you would think he's way easier to manipulate, right? Yeah. Like, Saul Guerrero might see him and be like, they got him.
Yeah.
And you know what? I actually do believe it now. I'm sorry, Jyn, but your father is this terrible person. Like, I think he can believe that.
Sure.
Knowing how codependent Galen actually is.
Yeah.
From this book.
I get what you mean. But yeah, let's get into the book itself.
Yes, sir.
And talk about this. Book was in 3 parts.
Yep.
And I do want to say the beginning of this book, I think, was the biggest surprise for me, because I guess I've been under the impression that the Death Star, maybe 1, didn't take as long to build as I thought it really did. Okay. I thought it was much shorter time frame, maybe.
Did you?
Like, after the Empire really did. However, you see it at the end of episode 3.
You do.
So then my thought is like, well, because we see in episode 2 that the Geonosians and Count Dooku get this plans, right? You see, oh, look at these plans.
Dooku's holding the plans for the weapon.
All right, well, the Separatists start making this thing, and then he just takes it over whenever he takes over the galaxy, and then continues construction of it. But all that's not real.
Nope.
That's all just what I had in my head.
And now you know the rest of the story.
Yeah. When this went in and was talking about, the Naboo crisis 11 years ago was one of the lines it had, and I was like, Naboo crisis 11 years ago? Wait a minute. And I was like, hang on. When is this? We're just, it's like a year into the Clone Wars. And they've already been, like, working and setting up construction and stuff for the Death Star to be made. And I was like, dang, okay. And who built it? The Republic.
The Republic.
And I love the reasoning. It's like, basically, like, it's like Cold War.
It's an
right?
arms race, yeah.
It's not even Cold War. Cold War is after we had it. But it's like in World War II, where, like, everyone's trying to make this big weapon.
Yeah.
It's like,
how do you end the war to end all wars?
Yeah.
You make the final weapon.
Yeah. So they're making this big battle station. We better make it before they make it.
Yeah.
And just that whole idea of, like, who was making the Death Star and what reasons they were making it and everything, and how long it was in the process of being made.
Yeah.
I was like, I was not expecting it to be, 1, made by the Republic during the Clone Wars, and 2, to be started by the Geonosians.
Yeah. No, I agree. Honestly, it kind of gave me the same feeling I had when you play Jedi Fallen Order for the first time and you go back to Ilum, and you're like, this is Starkiller Base?
Sure.
Starkiller Base has been under construction for this long?
Yeah.
And it changes a lot. Kind of the same thing with the Death Star.
It's kind of like, we were just talking about Bad Batch, but Project Necromancy, like, we see the fruits. Necromancer, sorry. The fruits of the labor we see in episode 9.
Yeah.
But it has started back episode 3, like around that time.
I know.
And it's just crazy to, like, see, like, these plans that Palpatine has and how long he will work on preparing all of his weapons and ways to control the galaxy.
Yeah. It's, I mean, it makes sense, though, because, like, Project Necromancer stuff probably has its inception with Darth Plagueis and his obsession with creating life.
Yeah.
And then Palpatine, he's always thinking in the next step. So then he's I'll create life and order a clone army. And then I'll do this, and I'll do this, and I'll do this. But it's the super weapon. It's the symbol of fear that has lasted quite some time in terms of planning.
Yeah. I mean, Palpatine, there is a clone army ready for this war that we have just not even gotten into yet, right? Where'd this army come from? Oh, well, Sifo Dyas wanted to do it. Yeah. He saw the visions.
The guy that's always seeing visions.
Oh, okay. But, this long plan has just worked for it all, I guess, and it's what he always does. Yeah. So that was surprising to me of, Republic and, well, who are we going to have build this? How about Poggle and his drones? Yeah. Have them start building it.
Yeah. And then Poggle rebels. Well, I guess not rebels. He kind of was working for the Separatists and then realizes what's going on. And yeah.
But with that, I didn't know some of the stuff about Geonosians that are in this as well.
What type of things?
Well, we have the thing with the drones and well, if the drones aren't working, then they start thinking they want to be higher up, and then they'll start trying to take over. And there was this hierarchy
because
you gotta keep them working.
Exactly, they're a hive mind species, right? So their wants and desires and satisfactions and hormones work very differently than more individualistic species. So you want to keep them working, or they'll. You need to keep them occupied. That's why you got to have 3 days of games with monsters killing people, right? That's why they're super excited. They're like, who are these 2 Jedi that just showed up in our factory? I don't know, but we're going to execute them.
Yeah! No, it was just some interesting back lore, I guess, about Geonosians and we saw in Clone Wars where Poggle the Lesser's captured, right? We see Anakin, torturing him, right? During that one episode where there's the little worms and stuff, and I think that's Poggle that Anakin's like, I'll figure this out, right?
I love when Poggle's on screen.
Yeah?
Because I love the
noise?
Links they go to for his voice.
The sounds and the noises that they make to...
I was watching Attack of the Clones on Disney Plus the other day, and there's Disney Plus has the extras feature, so you can just watch all the DVD extras on it now. It's a great part where Ben Burt's coming up with the voices and showing what he has, and you hear it in full quality without anything else, and it's crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
But I just... it's so funny.
But yeah, I thought a lot of the way that they kind of put this all in there and kind of has it with a lot of the stuff that we've seen in Clone Wars and different aspects all kind of melding together. The beginning of it was really cool.
Yeah.
Also the they make a what do they call it? A cell, the whatever cell. It's basically the overseeing unit of creating this Death Star, right?
Yeah.
I forget what it's called.
I thought I wrote it down, but I didn't. It's I can't remember right now.
But it's like a council basically.
Yeah.
Right. But they had one of the guys that was a good chunk of it and talked about different aspects was Dr. Gubacher, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, that name sounds familiar. But I don't know why.
Okay.
I had to look him up to see who he was.
The Doc?
I didn't know if do you remember who he is?
I don't think.
He's the prawn? I forget. Do you know the Octopussy dudes? Remember the cube where there was that weird Octopussy bounty hunter dude? He's one of those race.
Okay.
But he's the one who changed up D-Squad.
Yeah.
And added extra things to the KT droid and the one that was emptied out to be
in the Sunny Day in the Void stuff.
Yeah,
that
for
one?
all of the D-Squad arc.
Okay.
He was the one who was manipulating and changing them and stuff. Dr. Gubacher,
okay,
I think was the name that they said in the book.
I didn't realize that was him.
And I'd watched what is it? Kanan has been watching a little bit more Clone Wars here and there and stuff. He had been watching Avatar a lot more, but he's been watching more Clone Wars and stuff too. But I think that might have been. I'm like, this name. I had to look him up because I'm like, I don't know. It just sounds familiar, and I don't know who he is. So I had to look him up on Wikipedia.
That's sweet.
But then I was like, oh, he's from D-Squad.
That's cool.
But he's only in that one episode.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, that's pretty cool. So he was involved in there just
that
as being
really
a mad scientist kind of guy, right? So I thought it kind of fit.
Has nothing to do with the book, but I also saw Stephen Stanton talk about those set of episodes with D-Squad.
Oh, yeah?
And how the creatures they end up riding, the ostrich things, are the creatures from the Bad Batch that just escaped.
Really?
In the newest episode. They're the same, not the same, but they're of that species.
The same species? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
That's really
Because
cool.
whenever I saw them back, I'm like, man, we ever seen those guys before?
Yeah,
Those
I know.
like weird ostrich
Exactly.
guys? Those
That's
are
what I
cool.
thought.
I forgot about that.
I was like, no, man, they're just making new model. No,
really
they
neat.
already had that all done. That's the advantage of having those systems continue to inform the rest of the show.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
But those are a couple of my first thoughts that I had from like the first part of the book and stuff
Nexus
too.
said that he read the book before he watched Rogue One.
Oh, really?
And how disappointed he was that Lyra died so quickly.
Man. Yeah.
Yeah, that does suck. I
Because
didn't even think about how much that would suck to have
Yeah.
a character you love like that just done.
she's such a big part of this
know.
book, and like
Yeah.
her in the later part of the book too, like
Uh-huh.
really pushes Galen with
Yeah.
some aspects and stuff too. But yeah, but they, for them, they start off imprisoned, I guess, kind of right on a vault.
Vault,
I believe is what it's called.
VALLT.
And he's I don't know, basically working but imprisoned and.
Zerpan Industries
Yeah,
or something like that.
Zerpan,
Yeah, but
Zerpan.
they're trying to get him to work on the Separatist side, right? With what will ultimately be super weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought Krennic, I think it was Krennic who says like, we need to go and get Galen because he knows these crystals and stuff and be really good. He's talking to Amada,
Yep.
Amida,
Masamita. Yeah.
right? Talking with him and he's like, well, he's a pacifist. However, he has a kid on the way,
Yeah.
and they could use that as leverage to make him
Yeah.
work for it. So that's like his reasoning for going and saving them. But even kind of it's not before that, but like somewhere in there's like that backstory that they have where like they used to go to school and stuff together.
Yeah,
or
they
something,
went to school
and
together.
I thought the friendship chemistry was really interesting aspect that I didn't necessarily get in the movie.
Well, no, because I mean, at that point, the friendship is broken.
Yeah.
Right? Like you get this feeling that he and Lyra and Orson Krennic, they have some type of
History.
But I mean, yeah, it's sad, but again, it's the codependency. Like Krennic recognizes that in Galen. He like, look, it's equivalent exchange. If you're going to be this good at something, you're going to be this bad at something too.
Sure.
And he's bad at, I guess, picking his directions.
Yeah.
Like especially as a pacifist in a time of war, like, well, what can you do that's not going to benefit war strategy, And Krennic just knows what to say to get him to not think about it and to isolate him from his other support system, Lyra.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah. But I like the chemistry they had in the
me
book.
too.
I like the it was like a charm that Krennic had.
For being such a dick.
Yeah,
He is very
like
charming.
I started this book being like, I hate this guy.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, he's got a charm to him in this that I think if you get this story first before later on, I think it's much more tragic as opposed to expecting it. You know what I mean?
agree.
It's like watching episodes 1 through 3 before watching episodes 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Sure.
it's so much more tragic. Like, no, why is he doing this?
I know.
What are you doing?
You're not waiting for the axe to fall.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You don't have the expectation of what's going to be coming.
I mean, other than just the expectation that the Clone Wars will end
sure,
and the Empire will rise, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But he's playing the long game of wanting to like come out on top of everything, but also there's that element of like kind of talking with friends. I liked what was it? I think it was Galen who offers Krennic at one point, like kind of like we could go into business with each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, there's like Galen looks at him as like a friend. Like my friend got the Republic to come and save me, like this.
And he has a hard time like saying he doesn't trust a friend.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's hard for him to like his I don't know. It feels like his intuition is to defend Orson to Lyra.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's his weakness. Yeah. I mean, it's nice to. I mean, we're told about the relationship that Galen has with Jyn, but we get to see a little bit more of that. A little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, but especially like, not necessarily the guilt, but he doesn't necessarily want to be with his family all the time. I mean, his mind is occupied elsewhere, and I think that might feel like it takes away from his relationship with Jyn, but I think it kind of enhances a little bit more because of the emotional outpour he does when Jyn and Saw Gerrera are finally seeing his message on Jeddah and realizing what this guy has done and how long he's done it. he's not codependent there, you know?
Yeah.
And he does it for the love of his daughter. It's such
Yeah.
a powerful moment. I think this enhances all that, spices it all up.
Yeah, I haven't watched the movie. I wanted to watch the movie before getting to talk about it, but I
yeah.
haven't gotten to yet. But I think
Rogue One, so good.
I think it probably. I mean, I already liked the movie to begin with,
Yeah.
but having these little bits of history added in. Also, I don't know if I've watched it since we did. What was the Jin book we read? What was that one called?
Rebel Rising.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Like,
should.
I haven't watched it since that one either.
You know, I think for good reason. After a first watch, a lot of people in Rogue One, especially with Saw Gerrera, will be like, "Why is he dying? Like, you can go too." But once you realize, like, not just how crazy Saul has become and how much he recognizes that
His paranoia.
his paranoia, but also he doubted Galen Erso for a long time, and that was the reason that he left Jin. I mean, you could say it's not, but I really do think it is. One of the reasons that he left Jin is because he just couldn't trust her. You know, and once he realized, oh my God, I've been that broken, where this person who has given up so much to just give us a chance to destroy this weapon, and I doubted him.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I think that he realizes I've gone too far and I can go no further.
There's not much of me left.
I will run no more. Yeah. Yeah. Watching that stuff's just way better after probably these two books that we've covered now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think both these have been really good for kind of feeding into more of the history of those characters that, I mean, you get little bits of the idea, but I don't think you get as much, which is.
I mean, Rebel Rising, Catalyst, and then Andor will finish up,
Oh, yeah.
you know, with season 2, and that's going to be it. Like, having all those three under a belt and then going back into Rogue One
Yeah.
is pretty nuts.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're understanding Galen better, understanding Jen better, understanding Cassian better. Like,
Exactly.
that, yeah, I like that a lot. Also, when this one we got when he named her Stardust.
Yeah, we did.
I thought it was
nice.
cute because he was like looking at her eyes and her eyes had changed colors
Yeah.
and he was like, "There's stardust in her eyes," and then
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, that's cool because I was wondering when I started, I'm like, okay, well the baby hasn't been born yet, and I was like, I wonder like when we get like do we get the idea of the name because we know from the code name of the project, right? Like, okay, Stardust, but I thought it was a cute thing from him.
Yeah, especially. I mean, I've always just assumed that he was, Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about that a lot. We're made of stardust, right? Because all of the elements found in our body were formed in the crucible of dying stars and then exploded across the universe and then eventually made their way here, which is a pretty amazing thing. And I just thought maybe Galen, being scientifically minded like he is,
He looks at it that way.
sees, oh, look what this specific stardust has formed. It's interesting.
Interesting idea,
Yeah.
sure. But yeah. What'd you think of, there's, I think only really one new character that we really get in this book. Haas, right?
Haas Ubit.
Obit, yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think of Haas Obit?
the smuggler. I mean, I thought he was good. I definitely liked the idea of the Empire like encouraging smuggling in places so that they can tighten security.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought he was an interesting character. I don't have much to say about him.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot on him initially.
Yeah.
I had finished the book last week at some point, and then over this last week, I started trying to like re-listen to some stuff. So
Yeah.
I think part one's a lot more fresher in my mind.
Yeah, sure.
I really started liking him in the like towards the very end of
Yeah, me
part
too.
3, and then when I started re-listening to part 1, he gets shoved into this by Krennic,
Yeah,
right?
he does.
Which is like I think it's one of the first times you really see Krennic. Like I think early on you just kind of see Krennic like thinking about what he wants to do and try to save Urso and the gains he can get from it. But him bringing Haas into it and his lack of caring for like what it does to Haas.
Yeah.
Like that's when you first get that slimy feel. I think
It's what the
from
Empire
Krennic,
does to just the people at large.
But he's that middle ground smuggler where he's
Yeah.
like, I just will smuggle for anybody.
Yeah.
Like I don't really want to take sides, and he's worried about like what the Empire's going to do for this, and he kind of gets pushed into this situation. But it gives him a chance to meet Galen and Lyra,
Yeah.
and which then comes back later on for being helpful for them
Yeah,
as well.
it
So
does.
I was like, it was interesting, and I was waiting to see like, all right, well we have this guy, but I'm like, I really expected Saw to be involved because Saw's in the very
Yeah.
beginning of Rogue One. So
He
why
is.
is he not around here?
Yeah. Now, I thought he was going to be a little more involved in the book, honestly, but I wasn't disappointed or anything.
No.
Yeah.
But going in towards, I think it's into part 2 of the book, because this jumps sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
Big time.
You start in the Clone Wars, and then we get into getting out of the Clone Wars and into like the Imperial
Empire
time
proper,
frame. Yeah. So, in there we start getting a moment with Haas, and he's working for Krennic, but also trying to like Krennic and Tarkin. Like Tarkin comes in, right? And I love.
And he's got to.
I love the Krennic Tarkin like back and forth. Because Tarkin gets the Death Star, but it's Tarkin like lying in wait, kind of like letting Krennic do stuff so that he can try to be like, now I take it.
Exactly. Tarkin knows, like, okay, even if this project it succeeds, it's going to have a ton of growing pains, and I don't want to be at fault for them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let this guy who thinks that he's using me, I'm going to use him, and they kind of use each other to a point, and then Krennic falls away.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting having Tarkin, like he had to fight Haas and Saw and like this little group of like rebels and stuff.
For a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for a bit.
Uh-huh.
And then like he's I forget who he calls, it might be Amita, for like reinforcements or whatever it was, and being like, I need more of this. I was like, well then just send me this. And he's just trying to win this battle and stuff, and he gets ruthless with it a little bit and takes out the cliffside and stuff. And I was like,
he does.
It was a good play as far as like trying to win.
Yeah.
But it's just Tarkin. I don't know. It's just a Tarkin-y kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he wins, and his exchange with Haas I thought was interesting, but also was it in that moment? There's a moment at some point that I thought was kind of interesting that he related. It might have been earlier on actually with Urso. He related his Citadel experience to being captured or imprisoned or something like that. And I was thinking it was with Haas, but it might have actually been Galen on Volt. I can't remember now.
Now I'm doubting it too, but he did mention that, yeah.
But I thought it was interesting having him kind of talk about a vulnerable moment, which I don't feel like we often get with Tarkin.
I mean, he's a master manipulator, just like all
I
the
guess
others.
That's true
but,
too.
I mean, that's the best way to manipulate somebody, is to make them feel like you're being vulnerable, but really you're lying in wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Haas too, just before we get off of that, did you see the message that Nexus sent about Haas?
I don't think I did.
He said, little funny bit of extra trivia ahead of the Catalyst discussion. In Rogue One of Jyn's toys is named, through the visual guide, as Lucky Has Obolobit, named after Haas Obit from Catalyst. Granted, it looks nothing like him, but she's a kid.
Sure. Because Haas is like humanoid, but he's not a human.
Yeah, right. We know she has Stormy, which is the little stormtrooper that she has.
Yeah.
And one of her other toys is
I
named
didn't know. That's
after
cool.
him. So that name being around, and, that's what kids do, right? Like they name their toys after certain important people in their life sometimes, especially at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
that was a cool detail.
Yeah, I like that. No, Haas-wise, I enjoyed him towards the end and everything too. I liked his trip with Lyra that he took and like was kind of showing the galaxy and stuff. But then it opened the door for like, I think it was for him that they had the conversation of like, if you ever want to take another trip, just let me know, and it could be a whole family trip and stuff. And it led into the whole escape. Of everything too, and where they met Saw Gerrera.
Absolutely.
And I just was like, okay, I see kind of what happens here, and I like Haas for what he's doing and how he's helping, the Ursos. But
agreed.
But yeah, originally like he didn't stand out in my mind till I got to the end, and then when I started re-listening to it again, I'm like, you know what? I kind of like what they do with this character.
Yeah, any time that I have started to re-listen to a book that I've finished, like, I always get so much more out of it the second time.
Yeah.
I need to just try to factor that into my time.
I wish I want to try to listen to the book twice before we do this, but I don't always get a chance to.
Yeah.
But I think it just helps me so much more of, like, picking up more stuff.
Yeah, when you're reading the first time, like, you're not understanding what's trying to hook you. You're just absorbing information and hoping that information becomes more relevant as you go.
Sure.
But sometimes you're like, this. You might be like listening to one person part, like, this piece probably isn't that important. I don't need to pay attention too much, and it's like a linchpin for the entire thing,
Yeah, right.
And it's always fun to not just have an experience where an author is telling you a story and you're experiencing it, but the second time you get to go back and really see it being built.
Yeah,
and that's really fun.
Yeah.
And that's what's so fun about behind the scenes and all the extra Star Wars information we know about the movies and television
Oh, yeah.
shows.
I didn't know all that stuff the first time I did it.
Yeah.
It was the later times I
Exactly.
went through and everything, too,
Yeah.
which is sometimes one of the tricky things with, like, just doing reactions in general, where it's like I'm trying to absorb as much as I can,
Yeah.
but I don't know necessarily what's really important for in the
No, I get
future
you.
and
I mean,
what's foreshadowing. But
For
it's
me,
so
that's
cool to
why
get those.
that's why the reaction experience or the first time watch is such an important one, because I mean, both for the audience and for the storyteller. The storyteller needs. I mean, that's what they need to work on. Everything else is kind of like, yeah, if we make details that you can appreciate the second time, that's good. But if you don't enjoy the first one, you're not going to go to the second one.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
we got to get you
It's-
on the first.
It's I mean, it's on Star Wars related, but it's like talking about with Hamilton, right? Like you can watch and you can enjoy it the first time, but then when you rewatch and stuff, and you start like, oh, this motif or this line here, and they reiterate it back here, and it has like kind of a different meaning. And there's just different things that they do that you can pick up on, and that's the same with most things. And I think with this book too, it worked for me just getting into more of the same, like getting the story a second time.
Agreed.
But with that foreknowledge, I guess.
No, I feel like just us as a story consuming culture has started to not appreciate your first watch as much as your others. And I understand why that can happen, but like you'll hear about certain people being like, oh, I hate that movie. It's like, what? When we talked about it, when you first saw it, you loved it. It's like, yeah, but then I thought about it more. And it's like, well, what should be more valuable, the way you felt in the moment or the way you feel now? Because in the moment is a special moment you'll never get back.
Sure.
All the other ones, you're kind of repeating something, you know? So
No, I get what you mean.
And it seems like with books, I need to be able to either completely focus on it and do nothing else, or I have to go into autopilot and then I'm focusing on it. But sometimes on my first read through, I can miss some stuff that I don't necessarily do when I'm watching it.
Oh yeah, it was the second time of Dr. Gubacher, Gubasher. It's the second time listening through, and I'm like,
yeah, that's
I
awesome.
swear I know this guy. And then I don't even really remember the conversation as much. I feel like it kind of like I kind of glossed over and got the general idea of what they were talking about and the idea of constructing this weapon. And everything. Okay, yeah, I get it. But it was the second time I'm like, wait a minute, who's this guy? What? I think I know this name. And I'm like, who is this guy? Where's he from?
Yeah, no,
it just clicked.
that's cool. If I ever do a reread, I'll know that now.
Yeah, it was just neat.
Or if it pops back up somewhere.
Yeah, right. That'd be cool too. I know we got to get into Survivor here before too long, but I also want to talk about. I said about Lyra. One of my things I really liked with her was towards the end of the book. Like there's a meeting with Krennic.
Yeah.
Right. And Galen through a lot of it, like he's always kind of on Krennic's side, right, or making excuses, but he's also seen his own stuff.
Yeah.
And whenever he talks with Lyra, he's kind of like, no, it's fine, it's this or this. But then you finally get to that towards the end of the book, and you get to that headway of like, I have my own doubts.
Yeah.
And she's had her doubts. And they have that conversation with Krennic and everything. And I think my favorite thing with her was like, all right, well, why don't we leave? We're leaving tonight. It's like, what do you mean we're leaving tonight? It's like, well, I've already made plans. And he's like, well, what if I would have not been on board? It's like, then I would have convinced you. Like, she was already like, I know we're leaving, but you just don't know we're leaving yet. And then later on, when they were walking through the town, through the city, through Coruscant, and she's like, all right, we're going to go up 3 levels, then we're going to take another turbo elevator, we're going to go down 2 more levels, and we're going to be here. And like, I thought it was funny. He's like, you know these streets pretty well now, huh?
Yeah.
It's like, the only way to get Jen to sleep was to walk her.
Yeah.
And it's such a mom thing, I think.
It is.
But also, it feels like such a wife thing to be like, we're leaving? Here's where we're going? We're going. It's like, well, what if I didn't agree yet? And I love that he did agree. And then I love that he also went over and he started like changing some stuff. He's like, what are you doing? He'll look at that. And he's like, I know. So like Galen started like trying to like change and trick Krennic so that if he did try to follow them. And I was like, I just loved, I love the chemistry of the two of them, but it also felt like a couple for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I like that part.
Yeah.
Separately from that, I also really liked the district on Coruscant they were at.
Okay.
That was like it used to be like a field or something, right? And eventually it did get piled up on, but it's like the most natural part of Coruscant, where like just this kind of square, and you look up and you see the city around you everywhere, but just this little like almost like nature reserve that was reserved for nature, and then they just threw them out, and then just put, what will ultimately be the place where research is done that destroys nature.
Sure.
But I thought that was a cool little piece of Coruscant history with that.
It's kind of like the Rock, right? The highest point of Coruscant before the buildings or whatever it was on in Mandalorian. That
the
we saw.
Monument Plaza.
Yeah. Like it's just neat to see. Like, well, there used to be a planet here, you know, but now it's just all city because we've just kept on industrializing and building up.
Yeah. Oh, the smog must be terrible.
Yeah, right. Well, that's why like the lower levels get so bad too, right? So I don't know. There was I don't necessarily have much to say about this, but I thought it was interesting that there was and I kind of referenced it earlier, but there was a conversation talking about the wonders of the galaxy.
Yeah.
They didn't mention what they necessarily were, but they named off like there's like 100 of them, and they talk about like in the core, in the outer rim, in the mid rim. And I was like, man, I'm kind of curious what all those are.
Yeah, it would be cool to watch like a tourist or get like a tourist brochure from the galaxy vacation.
Sure, yeah.
Like
you go into that place and it has those little brochures, like all the brochure wall and everything. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like,
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Like you could theoretically, let's say you're a Rhodian. Maybe your 100 wonders might be a little different than like a human's because your history might be a little different. So what you put value on might be different, you know?
Possibly.
That'd be kind of interesting.
There, I think of like, you have the, what was it? The crying or talking mountain or whatever thing you talked about, like just
Mount
things.
Sorrow.
Yeah. Just things where it's like, we don't really have an answer for this, but this is like a living mountain.
Yeah.
And it's a wonder of the galaxy.
Yeah. Isn't
or
that
like
weird?
In Doctor Who, there was an episode where like there was like the singing like plateaus or whatever they were.
Yeah.
And like they didn't really have an explanation as to why they sung, but when the wind blew through them, that just sounds like a wonder of the galaxy.
What do you think, like, of the Star Wars that we have consumed? What's one of the wonders?
What is a wonder?
Yeah.
I mean, if Mount Sorrow is real, I think that's a good one. Like a mountain that is like, what exactly? Could it talk, or it was like could cry, or is it?
Yeah.
It was just.
It could heal you with the power of friendship.
Yeah, that sounds like a wonder of the galaxy.
It does sound like a wonder.
As far as things we know in canon,
like anytime we see like a half destroyed planet,
Yeah.
It's always awesome. And you see like the core like radiating out and the excretion disc trying to like reform into a sphere. I think that's always cool, but I imagine that's relatively common, not necessarily a wonder.
Sure, for any planets that have been
Yeah.
destroyed
I mean,
or something.
we're going to go into it very soon, but Jedi Survivor has Tanalorr and the Abyss, and getting there, that's a wonder.
Yeah. No, sure. I mean, that's a really good one there.
Maybe like Kessel.
Man, I was about to jump to that just because of Tanalorr,
okay, yeah.
but I was trying to think of it what it was. But yeah, where that it was like what, a black hole that the thing got sucked into?
Yeah.
Like
Whatever
whatever that whole thing is, like that might be a wonder, but I don't know.
I don't want to see that wonder.
Yeah. I'll continue to wonder. I don't need the answer for that one.
Seaman says, the great Zillo Beast of Malastare. That's a wonder. Kobo Abyss.
Man, there used to be so many of those too, though, and now it's just, gone.
Purgles, the Maw, yeah.
Oh, was it the Eye? What was it in Andor that made all the
Eye of...
Remember everyone came together and watched all the falling...
Starts with an A, right?
I don't remember.
Crap. I need my notes again.
Yeah. But
Aldhani.
Is it called? Yeah, the Eye of Aldhani.
That was the Aldhani people. The Eye of Aldhani.
Yeah,
that wasn't amazing.
That should be a wonder, I think. Right?
That's 100% on the brochure.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah. I think that's the answer. That's the one.
I
just love the idea of like normal things, like the worship trees on Kashyyyk for Wookiees are probably like trees, But if Rey was there from Jakku, like how wonderful that would be to see.
Yeah. What about the talking about Rey, the hole that she like? Wasn't there like a force hole, right, on that planet?
Is that a wonder?
Is it?
Yeah,
I
sure.
don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Or like the tree on Dagobah. Is that
spot.
like a wonder? I don't know.
I feel like those are like caution.
Maybe.
Step away.
Yeah.
Don't go here. Maybe though.
Another thing in this book too, kind of related to wonders that I don't think I've ever heard of before, was they called things like legacy planets, which I kind of related to like we have like Wayne National Forest, right? Like it's an area that's like this is made to be protected. Like, you don't build.
You
here.
don't take resources from here. Yeah.
This is like a protected national forest, and these legacy worlds sounded to be similar to that.
Yeah.
But the Empire was starting to come and
anyway.
take over resources and stuff in there, and I was like, okay, that's an interesting It's a word I've never heard, but I started relating it to like special, Yellowstone National Park or something like that, where it's like this is protected. You don't frack here. You don't you don't do any of that stuff here. But the Empire's like, we don't care. We need Kyber crystals. They're hard to find. We're gonna go wherever we need to get stuff.
We have a new legacy world. Well, it's more like a moon.
Yeah. Was there anything with Kyber crystals that was new in this to you?
Not necessarily. I mean, Galen learning to grow them. Like, we've had synthetic crystals in the EU, at the very least. Like, most red crystals used to be synthetic.
Yeah.
Like, the Sith would grow them.
There was talk about, I forget who said it, but someone said about, I used to always think that they were like living and growing and like that. And I was like they call them like an organic crystal or something like that. And I never heard of them being like that. But also there's such a mystery, like when we see the younglings go to Ilum to get them and each one like calls to them. Yeah. But sometimes it's tricking you. And I'm like, well, it must just be the Force. But I'm like, maybe it's an element of the crystals too. There
was that very sickening part where they're getting all these crystals at a certain size, and Galen's like, where would you get all these? And they imply like they took these off dead Jedi. They just took them out of their lightsabers. Yeah. Here you go, Galen. And it's just dark. Yeah.
There's also the conversation with him and Lyra talking about perhaps the Jedi were trying to protect the galaxy from these as like a weapon. Yeah. Like they knew the power it did have. But Galen's like, well, then, they should have let us have. Or like there was like an argument kind of between that. Yeah. But then I felt like later on he was like, you may have been right. The Jedi may have been protecting us from this.
I mean, we got a little bit of it. But I kind of assumed Lyra was going to be a little more spiritual than she ended up being.
She had like a little bit of Force sensitivity, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, she has the Kyber necklace that she gives to Jin, and she talks about, she pretty much says, may the Force be with you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought she was more closer to like Guardian of the Will stuff than science, but it makes sense too.
Sure. That could have been interesting. And then it would have been like more of a mirror to Galen, I guess, than what we got.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember her having like a Force sensitivity thing. I remember that from Rogue One. So I thought like the little bits that they kind of sprinkled in this was interesting.
Well, anybody can use a Force iron.
I mean, I guess.
Just True. Easier for some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on your M count.
It does. But I had a good time with the book.
No, I did too.
And I liked how it also, because it's the same author, kind of sets up, and you could kind of see like the past to Tarkin.
Yeah.
That was really cool too.
Yeah.
The Tarkin book specifically.
I definitely think that like if you like Rogue One, like you should definitely read this book and just get a little bit more history on those characters, because like you don't get a lot of Galen in Rogue One really.
And and
even Krennic.
No, you don't. And I'm legitimately jealous of the people that got to read it and then experience the book. I would like to live in a different world where that happened, and then I could like judge the two experiences, what I liked more,
When I found out that this book came out like a month or two before Rogue One, I was like, oh man, it could have been really cool to kind of have this knowledge before watching Rogue One.
Man,
and then having that Nexus feeling of like, they killed her off real quick.
Yep.
Man, all right.
I can remember when the Revenge of the Sith novel came out before the movie.
Yeah.
And it being like at, what bookstore would we have had then? Walton Books or something. I don't know.
Shoot, whatever was Old Navy now.
Yeah. Whatever that place was. But I can remember being
Borders.
But I can remember like going there and like seeing it like, wow, here it is, and like having to like resist the urge, like,
don't do it.
Who's General Grievous?
You could learn anything that's bad, You don't look at the back of the music.
Yeah. Oh, what a time. 2019.
No, it was definitely a really good book. I actually like this one. What was the one we read last time? I think I like this more than last time, but now I can't remember what we read last time.
The last thing that we read?
Yeah.
It was
Yep. I just blanked.
Why am I going blank?
What was it called? Guys, you know.
I just took my notes out.
See? let me hear. I'll just click this button. Nope, not that one. It wasn't Queen Shadow, was it?
I think it was
Lords of Sith.
Test of Courage.
Was it Test of Courage?
Was that the last one? I think it was. Yeah, because we had Queen Shadow and Test of Courage.
Okay. Man, it was second on my list. I should have just read that one. But I was like, no, it wasn't that.
Last month was nuts for me.
That was so long ago. But I think it was just because
last month was a blur.
I had my notes. But no, I really did enjoy this one more than I guess I thought I was going to, especially starting it a second time. I was like, oh man, this stuff makes so much more sense.
Yep, fun book. Encourage anybody that hasn't and for some reason listen to all this to read the book.
Why did they do that? So no,